Welcome to another edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast, the PGA edition. This is your host, Bryan Mears. As always, I'm joined by Colin Davey and Peter Jennings, a.k.a. CSU Ram. We are back talking about another PGA tournament. It's the Shriners Hospitals for Children Open. So we're going to talk through this. The GPPs, the tournaments on DraftKings aren't too huge this week. You know, it's right in the middle of the NFL and NBA, but still cash games are available, and the tournaments that are available, I think, are pretty solid. So we're gonna get through this and give our analysis on the players as usual. But first, Colin, we got to talk about your Cubbies. It was looking dire there, but they ended up getting a win in Chicago. So is that sort of all you were wishing for at the end there?
I mean, my bar at this point is give me one World Series win in Wrigley. I would have been extra pissed if they couldn't win a game.
Right.
At the very least, we may be set up for the perfect series. Like, the silver lining is the Cleveland had a 3-1 lead. Jokes are going to be fantastic if they actually pull this off. So that's a great silver lining. But yes, despite the Cubs' best efforts, I am still here. This may be the last podcast before I am straight dead of a heart attack following Tuesday and Wednesdays. So in case it's my last, it's been fun, y'all, and it's been a pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Hey, what's going on with you? Are you into this at all, or are you just in NFL, NBA grind mode here?
Full-on NFL and NBA grind mode. I was out to dinner last night, go out on this double date with a buddy, and I actually wanted to have the football game on versus the Cubs game on. And I was like, man, fantasy, it's just taking I had a $60,000 sweat on Ezekiel Elliott for a Q and some other stuff. So I guess there's merit there. But I have been watching and follow. I've watched basically every game, and I'm rooting for the Cubs. But certainly disappointing. Losing the game to Tomlin was the big disappointment, not being able to put up any runs. So we'll see. Obviously, there's a lot of diehard Cub fans out there, and I'm not pretending to be that guy. Which, Colin, how much have you seen? I've seen so many new Cubs fans that are diehard Cubs fans this year.
It kind of comes with the territory. I mean, that's just especially I don't begrudge that. I think you're going to get that with them. But man, if the Cubs are not prone to it more than anyone else, so a lot of freshly minted baseball caps, not looking too worn, et cetera, et cetera. It'll happen. It's the World Series. Plenty of room on this bandwagon. Whatever gets us across the finish line, come on, please just make this work. One time. All right.
Well, 2 times, really. But let's start with one. All right, let's just quickly touch on some of the stuff in the past couple of weeks before we get to the Shriners. Colin, I guess I'll kick to you, Pete, first, and then we'll get to Colin as we move into this week's Shriners. Any thoughts? Anything you've learned? Matsuyama had a really, really great tournament. Your boy Keegan is still on the rise over the past couple of weeks. Any thoughts or stuff you've noticed over the last little bit?
I watched a little bit of the golf last week. It was tough, obviously, with the timing, but I watched Matsuyama, and he looks totally healthy and obviously had a great showing. I was really bullish on him coming into the year, and then he was dealing with a hip injury, which is never good for a golfer, and didn't really perform the same. So I think that there is merit to considering him more, and I imagine that a lot of my lineups will start with Rory and Matsuyama to start the year. When we get closer to the major season. I think there are 2 guys to be really bullish on. That's the other thing I took away. Rory did switch his clubs. He's now hitting the TaylorMade M2 driver. So anyone who's obsessed with golf or looking to get equipment for themselves, it's pretty clear to me that TaylorMade is making the best driver. I'm a big Callaway guy myself, but TaylorMade basically got all these guys that are hitting Nike driver to switch over. So, I think Chappell switched, Rory switched, Paul Casey switched. So, certainly something to pay attention to there. And Rory was hitting his driver like a champ as usual last week. So, yes, that's kind of the notes. But, Matsuyama is the biggest one.
So this is not something we need to spend a whole lot of time on, but just quickly, what are your thoughts on when a player changes clubs? Is it a better thing, I guess, maybe if they're playing with bad clubs and they move, or is there an adjustment period, or even just from your personal playing? Is there something that would worry you, or is it okay?
Well, for my personal play, I wish I was good enough to get a huge jump on the clubs. But for these guys, I mean, Rory talked about it extensively, how the challenge for him now is finding golf balls. He has like 3 years of the Nike golf ball supply locked up. He's going to be looking for a new one. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge change for these guys, and it's something to pay attention to. I do think with Rory, it could actually be a benefit. He switched that Scotty Cameron putter, which yielded better results at the end of the year. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a little bit benefit here because Nike has a lot on their plate. I think they're doing a decent job in golf, but I think there's a lot better options out there, and it could help Rory.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's sort of a I don't know, an underrated part of golf and golf analysis and baseball, and I mean, I guess a little bit in baseball, but in basketball, we don't have to worry about the equipment like the ball or anything like that. So it's just sort of a unique thing in golf where we have to worry about a specific sort of club or equipment for a player. Okay, cool. Let's do our questions part of the podcast where I ask Colin and Pete a random question that might or might not be dumb, and some sort of strategy question for this week. And the one I got this week, guys, I actually was reading through some articles about this tournament and this course in particular, which is the TPC at Summerlin in Las Vegas. And I read this from a PGAtour.com article, and it said, recent trends have shown Las Vegas to be a prime locale to add another first-time winner to the list. And I guess maybe that's just because Smiley won last year, and I honestly don't know other than that. But my question is, and Colin, you can tell me how dumb this is there any data or anything or even just a narrative that would back that up that would make some place more, I don't know, more apt to have first-time winners than other locations?
Yeah, there's a perfectly good explanation, and it doesn't take rocket science. It's because it's a weaker field. Think about in every other event how much like win equity is sucked up at like the very top heavy. Like there's no big four here. There's not even even the best representative from like the second tier is probably like Brooks Koepka, like headlining the field. It makes sense that like if the big guys aren't there to kind of take away any of the titles or competing for them, then first-time winners probably have a better shot. So I think it's just a weak field and nothing else. So I don't think it's a particular trend that you need to isolate, saying like, all right, go out of your way to pick first-timers here.
Right.
I just think you see them because it is an incredibly weak field. And we'll talk about it when we get into player selection and all that. But there are a lot of no-names here. Which is good and bad, but like even still, you get some pretty like up and comers who don't even have web.com tour data. I'm sure like we're getting NCAA rookies are kind of making their debut. Like Pete, do you recognize any of these? Like, are there like, I mean, you probably pay attention to the prospect pipeline more than I do. Like, is there a crop of NCAA rookies that are making their debut here that you kind of seen from the college circuit or anything?
I'm a little behind on that, unfortunately. There are some guys coming up this year that I was really high on. Rahm's a guy that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But, yeah, this will be kind of the first spot. And, there's not – the golf YouTube highlights aren't, as predictive, I would say, as
no, that's just science. I mean,
the high school and college highlights –
especially –
the high school and college highlights for football I can get behind. The golf, I'm struggling with any subjective analysis there. So I'm excited to see some of these guys and see the results and see if there's some guys that pop out, after a couple weeks of playing. But, yeah, I don't really know too many of these guys. I'm just going to have to rely on the data for the guys that we do know.
Yeah. Wesley Bryan is offended by your YouTube golf slander here, Pete. Cool. Colin, this course, TPC at Summerlin in Las Vegas, we just talked about it, sort of a weaker field, but it's been around for a little while. It actually, up until 2003, interestingly, was they played over 5 days. I believe they played 90 holes. It's sort of an interesting tidbit. But now they've been playing here for a little while. Now it's just a regular par 71, and they play 4 days, so normal tournament. But what sort of course is this? What guys do well here?
I mean, this is honestly maybe the weakest course fit I've seen all year. To the point where it's like I could probably spin some yarn about like it probably leans a little bit more accuracy than distance, because I see people like Finau getting a penalty, so that's just kind of like one of the auto flags. But it's honestly so weak, and we don't really do like we don't talk about too much as far as like magnitude of fit, how important it is week to week. I think you might even just be better off throwing it out and just don't even bother using course fit. Or at least I can't put together something where I can see like something useful because the plus minus kind of like magnitude is just so much weaker that I'm probably not even going to use course fit.
Interesting. So what do we do here, Pete? This is something where you just weight adjusted round score really heavy and just try to take guys who are playing really well and the most talented guys.
Yeah, I'm going with recent GIR score and an adjusted round, and then weighting in some birdies and some course history, and that's really the gist of my model. And it's popping out some guys that are interesting, and we'll talk about them here in a second. But it is tough. I mean, these are the weeks where I'm not quite as excited, where there's not an angle that I really like. We'll have to see if weather becomes something, but in Nevada at this time, it's really going to only be wind. So we'll see what happens. But, it's definitely a challenge figuring out an angle to take this week.
Yeah, maybe simple is better. That could definitely be the way to go. All right, let's get into our player analysis, and we'll just steamroll through this, guys. So let's start with the lower end here. So it's going to be guys. I'll set the ranges here. The lower end is going to be guys 7K and lower, and then our mid tier will be 7-1 to 8-9. So just in between 7 and 9, and then the upper tier, which is going to be above 9K. Colin, I'll start with you. These lower guys, and we were talking off pod about. There's a lot of guys that a lot of people probably haven't even heard their names before. So definitely an interesting week. But who's popping in your model?
Top of the list in the value tier is a guy we've alluded to before, Adam Hadwin, who admittedly I haven't been keeping too much track of him, but he's got a decent level of volume at this point. I'd say one of the better floors out there in the value tier. Number 2, apparently back in my good graces, is Ches Reavie, who I'm always happy to mention. I don't have to, tell you twice. Has some abysmal course history here for what it's worth. That kind of gets back into, how much of a different player was he and how much do you actually weight that? If you want to give that a lot of weight, you can probably safely skip him. Other than that, I think the guys that round out kind of the best in tier here are probably Robert Strub and Danny Lee. Danny Lee, I don't think we've seen under 7K all year, much less at one of the weaker fields. Yeah. I guess he's had a bad streak where, there's a reason he's back down here. And then if you want to go, and interestingly enough, the guy who always seems to be injured on and off again, but if you want some real relief, below 6K, Stuart Sink is definitely there. He's a classic type where he hasn't played a whole lot because he always seems to be injured, so his volume definitely isn't as good. But he does have some sneaky results. He'll get over to the Eurotour every once in a while, so we have some barometer of what he's doing. I'm still nebulous on if I believe in is upside repeatable or not, but if I did, he probably doesn't have a whole lot. But if you just need super cheap, he's more than capable of banking a top 5, top 10. I've seen it a couple times in regular PGA events. So he's probably my favorite under 6K. So surprise, surprise, Colin's picking Ches Reavie, something new and exciting. All right, what do you got for me? That's hopefully something different.
I don't have much different. The top guy on the model that I made here on FantasyLabs is Danny Lee. He stood out to me as a name. I have Reavie relatively high as well. Some other guys that are interesting that I don't know what to look into, but Bud Colley has a really high recent GIR. Did miss 2 cuts recently. He's someone who I think is minorly intriguing. Kyle Reifers is not too far down, and I've seen some sharp guys play him. So those are the kind of the names I'm considering. Hadwin's the second highest rated guy in this tier in my model, so I agree with you on Hadwin and Lee and Reavie. And then I think mixing in potentially Colley and Reifers, I think, is a pretty solid play as well.
Yeah, I could get behind Colley for sure. He's also kind of a similar injury knock. He's on and off. He hasn't been on tour the whole time. He's doing a comeback thing. Right. A lot of people were jumping on him kind of earlier when there was no data because there's some angle there, but just given the sharp volume that he's seen prior, I believe that.
Right, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, Danny Lee seems to be the guy that pops. He is if you're just looking by long-term adjusted round score, out of the however many guys are in this tournament, 100, whatever, he's got about a top 10 adjusted round score, and for some reason is 6-7. His adjusted round score is in the same ballpark as guys that are at the top of the pricing spectrum: Ryan Moore, Scott Piercy, even Keegan. So interesting. It just seems like he's a little underpriced there. So I think he should be a popular guy. All right, let's move into this middle tier. And Pete, I'll start with you. So let's go, guys. 7-1 to right below 9K.
All right, so at the top of the list for me, and I think he's a great play, is Brendan Steele at 8,800. I know that's Colin's boy, but I really like him overall in general. Rating high in the model is actually Patrick Rogers. I'm curious Colin's opinion, but I think he's a really interesting play. And then in the same mold, Jamie Lovemark is also nice. Two guys that have a lot of talent, a lot of distance, and certainly can make a lot of birdies, which is why they're popping in this specific model. And then in addition to that, I mean, there's some guys in the, I don't know. These guys are marginal. I think like Harold Varner is interesting because he's been hitting so many greens recently. But yeah, there's a lot of mid-tier guys that I think are decent plays that have their warts. Like Lucas Glover could definitely put it together, but he just can't putt. Graham Dillette is in like the same category. Yeah, so that's really it. But I love Steele. I think he's a great play. And then I like the bomber guys I listed, Rogers and Lovemark, who have actually been playing pretty well recently.
Unsurprisingly, Steele's the top of my list too. The one you could have, if you wanted to steal, just because it was a lock that he'd come up for sure, is Harris English, who I think is actually probably my favorite in the mid-tier overall. Easily the best value here, debatably some like better value than even some of the lesser guys. And I've always been high on him, like especially in the last like 3 or 4 months or so. Other than that, like I think, yeah, Glover's popping the same reason for me. I mean, I think the previous angle we've taken with him is like, no, he can't putt, kind of like the same Keegan Bradley boat, but like, and we've gone back and forth, and what does that mean? Is it predictive, et cetera, et cetera. Other interesting kind of mid-tier plays that you didn't mention I could see happening. Kevin Streelman is probably one of the more interesting ones, probably has the best course history of anybody in this tier. Let's look up what are his exact finishes over here. Let's give it a brief look because they're good. Shoot, they're not in front of me. And then the other guy who has similar good course history here is William McGirt, who I know we've talked about before, especially put in combo with a decent course history. Yeah, Streelman hasn't ever missed the cut here. In the past like 8 years, there have been like he's only finished 43rd, and everything else is top 20. Like Streelman's your clear cut course history pick here.
Yeah, Finau has decent course history as well. Looking at the FantasyLabs models for adjusted round there, but it is a tricky tier. I think roster construction is a bit interesting because there are some guys at the top that I like that are just a little bit more expensive. And you teased it with Keegan. I really do like him again. Even though I've been off him in general, he's just been playing incredible. So we'll talk about those guys here in a sec.
Yep. No, it wouldn't be a podcast without Peter going out of turn for the tiers. So I'm glad you're staying on brand.
I had a couple questions for you guys. Have you guys mentioned Lovemark or Varner? Those are guys that, if you sort of aggravate long-term and recent adjusted round score, they're guys that are pretty good for their price.
Yeah, I brought both of those guys up.
Yeah, they're lower tier.
Sorry.
They're both good plays. Varner mentioned he has the really high green regulation percentage. I think that makes a lot of sense. And Lovemark's with Rogers is the Bombers have been playing well. So certainly think that it makes sense, especially in this spot, to take those guys.
Yeah, my bad. I missed that. Last guy I want to mention, and hopefully you guys haven't talked about this guy, Cody Gribble. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Do we not bring him up?
Cody Gribble, 26-year-old guy. He won the Sanderson Farms Championship. He top 10 at Safeway. I guess been playing okay. Recent, really good adjusted round score. Young guy, both long term and recent. Add anything at all here?
I think he's all right. I don't love him. He's not popping, but I certainly understand the reason.
He's got a name for sure.
Yeah.
So I get it, but okay. So before that run on PGA Tour, like here's
bad. I know.
What's the 4 before that? Miscuts at. Let's take a look at some of these tournaments.
Colin, we're not supposed to look at those, okay?
Oh no, you did this. This is your fault now. The Boise Open, the DAP Championship, the Portland Open, the new Sentinel Open. Are those even web.com? I think it might be, but like I think there's definitely some there's a lot of miscuts here on some very questionably sponsored tournaments over here. I don't know. Maybe you have put a lot more rate into the Rust-Oleum Championship than I do. I am first to admit I could be missing something there. But if I believe in long-term adjusted around, yes, that is a great run lately. But oh man, are there's a lot of miscuts on some card rate.
I mean, right before that, 13th of the Utah Championship.
Yeah. Oh no, that's where champions are forged. I agree.
At the Lecom Health Challenge. I mean, God, you can pick and choose if you want here, but
I think you just picked this guy because his name is Cody Gribble, which in his defense is a great name. That's that. Submit that one for the name of the year bracket come March, and for sure. But no, that is one of the more extreme splits I've seen, where it's 3 straight top 10s in PGA. Followed by, I don't even know what to call that.
But yeah, that's sort of what makes him weird, right? Is that he played on an inferior tour and then comes to the PGA and wins, and gets top 10s, but can't make a cut on the web. So yeah, I wasn't actually being serious about bringing this guy up as someone you want to play in cash or anything like that. But I don't know. His data is not awful because of those recent plays. So I figured we should bring him up at least because of the win.
It's a good, yeah. It's the guy that won last week, to the one that we weren't paying attention to. So perfectly legit question. It's a good question.
Even though he didn't have a price, so you couldn't benefit from him last week. But anyway, all right. So let's move to the top tier. And Colin, I think it's back to you here.
Yeah. All right. So 9K and above.
Yeah.
Save Keegan for me, buddy.
I mean, he's your favorite. That's a given. Let's see. I had to do a double take when I saw Ryan Moore as the highest price in this field. I really don't get that one either. It's not even a course history pick because he has abysmal stuff here. I seem to tout the Ryan Moore fade no matter what tournament he's in any given week. I never thought he'd be the top price option. So I don't know. He's my usual auto fade this week, doubly so. I think Koepka is probably the best name in the field. Probably I have him projected as the highest. It's not necessarily a clear cut over someone even Jon Rahm, who I'm first to admit that he's put up barely enough results to kind of start registering, and I could see it. For cash, my default is, I always prefer someone with a little bit more volume. I get it if you want to take risks anyway and see it's I've seen enough, I've hit my minimum sample threshold. If you want someone who with a little bit more, someone rating similarly is Scott Piercy. I'd probably take Piercy over Rahm, all things considered, considering how closely they're priced. And Piercy just not only has more volume, but has way better course history. And then, I think Piercy and then the other best value probably in the tier, well, I guess I have to save him for Pete because this is his moment to talk about how much he loves him. But if you want someone similar, I also like Kevin Na, who has a little bit better course history and maybe a little bit better fit comparatively priced. But I will let you gush over Keegan Bradley all I want because this is also a site I want to see with my own eyes.
Yeah, no, I mean, Keegan was my least favorite golfer of all time. Just there's a lot of narratives. There's a lot of spots where he's cost me money, but I've actually rostered him the last couple weeks, and he's done phenomenal. And if you look at his recent GIR, it's incredible. He's been driving the ball like a champ, and the putting has turned around a little bit. So there's one reason to buy into the putting a little bit for someone like Keegan and any of these guys that switch from the long putter. He's found his groove a little bit. I don't expect him to be a great putter, but if he can even be average with the way he's striking the ball, it certainly makes sense to like him this week again. I love Jon Rahm, bullish on him long term. So in a spot in a weak field, definitely going to be buying his talent. I think that he's a really good option. We'll see what comes to fruition here in this spot. But yeah, I'm not going to be playing more. I don't think I'll be paying up for too many guys. One thing with Piercy that I did watch a couple weeks ago, he's really been working on his putting and his stroke and the mechanics around it. And a lot of the Golf Channel guys were talking about how he really could have a huge year if he can get the putting even average to slightly above average. So I think there's a lot of reasons to like him as well. His swing definitely looks good, and he can certainly win this tournament. So I think those are the guys at the top that I like. It is tough. There's no big name. There's not anyone I feel super great about outside of Keegan. And I definitely think Rahm is my main tournament guy. If my head-to-heads, I might have Rahm out there. So if you're bearish on him, you can come snag some games for me.
Colin, I'm interested in your Ryan Moore hate. Like, let me defend him for a second. I mean, he's 11K, but like we have to skew that relative to the field, right? So like he's 11K, but the field is awful. This guy has not. I think he's been below salary-based expectation in his last like 13 tournaments once, and that was barely. He's missed a cut like less, like longer than that. Like the guy's just been super consistent and really good lately. So I mean, I get it, like relative to like just a normal tournament, like Ryan Moore should not be 11K, but for this, for this specific tournament and the guys in this field, I mean, what would you want out of the top price guy?
I think like Koepka would probably be something that's just like way more believable. Maybe like, I don't know. I am looking at his results because, normally I just don't, think twice, and, he's kind of like an auto fade. But yeah, I do see stuff, especially during FedEx. Like, there was like, FedEx is actually kind of a wash. It's almost like a similar thing to Rory last week, where it was like 2 wins and a 42nd. Moore has like an 8, a 2, and a 64 and a 70-man field, right? So like there is an albatross in there that's dragging it down recently. I mean, other stuff has been solid, but I don't know. I think it's just this also may be a case of like, I think like Ryan Moore, like correct me if I'm wrong, there's a couple times, I swear this has happened, where he makes the cut, but he just mails it in Saturday, Sunday if he's not doing too well. I remember someone asked me, like, is there any way to predict guys who will mail it in going forward? I think long-term Augusta Brown should take care of that. But, like, Pete, does that ring a bell for you? Like, more like the mailing it in type on Saturday, Sunday, does more fit the bill?
It's hard for me to judge that stuff. I know he's had some really bad weekends. This is a guy who's a very highly rated young player coming out, and then he's gone through his ups and downs. But he's definitely playing better now. I certainly understand why he's the favorite. I do prefer Koepka long-term versus him, and I think Koepka is going to have a better 2017 season, but I certainly understand it. I wouldn't know any reason why he would mail it in more than other guys, but certainly an observation to pay attention to.
Okay. Colin, just last question before I guess we can wrap this up here, unless you guys have any thoughts on other golfers. You seem to have discounted, and you are the guy who is a little less on recent play than perhaps Pete and I are, but you seem to discount these recent tournaments just because I guess there are lesser inferior tournaments at the beginning of this 2017 season. So I mean, what do you do there? I mean, do you just discount recent even more? I mean, is there, should you try to talk Pete and I into the fact that recent should be weighed even less because it's just in bad fields? Because I mean, the recent play that we're measuring in our models is definitely affected by these lesser field tournaments like the Sanderson,
Yeah, and I think like that. I mean, in theory, that should be counterbalanced by like strength of field and player models or something like that, right? Okay. So like every time that, the results go really high, they're kind of counterweighted by recent field. And that field, the strength of field of the tournaments in which they play is kind of a little bit more better set up for like the regular season. So you're absolutely right. Like if you do get a known blip where it's like a concentration of weak tournaments, like I could see that kind of like skewing like almost like a hiccup type of thing. So it's always just kind of a balancing act of strength of field versus quality of results and stuff like that. So I could see that being like like caution in this part of the season type of thing. So that's a perfectly legit angle.
So maybe we have our sliders in our models, and one of the sliders is recent field score. Maybe that's something that you just put a little more weight into this week, just to account for the.
Yeah, that feels about right. Like recent field score, I could bump it up a couple points just to kind of balance the fact that like it's the Asian swing, right? Yeah.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Any last thoughts on guys in this upper range, guys?
John, Rahm, and Keegan. Riding or dying with those guys.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Cool. All right. Do we want to snake draft here?
Sure. Let's snake draft it up.
I want last this time. I want first.
So you want last and first? So we'll do.
I want pick number 3.
Okay. So are we doing this? Are we doing 9K and under first?
No, I think we do 9K over first, and then
Okay. All right. I'll go first. I'll take John Rahm.
All right. I'll take more. That's fine.
Guys, you're just giving me Kepka? Like, I can't take it.
Take Kepka.
I just should. I'm not overthinking it. All right. Yeah. And then under 9K now. I wish I could take Roberto Castro.
Just take your. There's an obvious choice here.
Yeah, I'm going with my weirdo horse, Harris English.
Okay.
I'll take Steele.
Fuck.
I can't believe you didn't take Steele, Colin.
Yeah, me neither.
I probably should have, but he's just. I don't need him to let me down yet again because he seems to do that every time I pick him. He lets me down. I'm never on the right side.
He can let me down this week. That's fine. Yeah.
I had one with Brendan Steele. I'm a fan. I will take. Man, I was not prepared. I was hoping that I could even get lucky there. I'll take Patrick Rogers. I'll even go cheaper. I'm taking. Wow. I have the least amount of salary spent by far, so if I win this one, I deserve a little extra or something.
What, like beating Oregon Trail when you're a farmer? Like you just get a points multiplier at the end?
Exactly. I love the Oregon Trail reference, man. That brings back some serious nostalgia.
Oregon Trail. All right, I guess we will end it there. Thanks, everyone, for listening. As usual, we definitely have our models for this week's tournament and for the Euro tournament. We are full grind into NFL and NBA. We have NHL coming up, so please sign up for the beta. I know Pete is super stoked about that one, right, Pete?
Oh, yeah. Love the NHL, and excited for what we can do.
Cool. Colin, good luck tomorrow. We're recording this on Monday night, mostly because Colin was like, I cannot record on the Cubs night. So, Colin, good luck to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Go Cubs.
There you go. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Good luck this week. We'll talk to you guys down the road.